Xtalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The Xtalks Life Science podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha, Senior Life Science Journalist at Xtalks.com. And this week, I'm delighted to introduce a special guest on our show. As always, we're so happy that we have amazing guests week after week. And this week, we have with us Anthea Cherednichenko, who is the Vice President, Hematology Franchise Head at Takeda, who will talk to us about driving innovation in rare disease through collaborations to better serve patients and their communities. Anthea has more than a decade of global experience serving the rare disease community, particularly those with blood and bleeding disorders. To hear more about the vital role collaboration plays in driving research and innovation in rare disease, with a focus really on addressing significant unmet needs to empower patients throughout their healthcare journeys, we're very excited to be able to have this discussion and conversation with Anthea. We will also hear about how internal and external partnerships are essential to Takeda's rare disease strategy. So to learn more about Takeda's approach to driving innovations in rare diseases in the current landscape, let's turn to Anthea now. Anthea, thank you so much for being on the show.
Happy to. Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to, as I always kind of do with our guests, I'd really like to learn more about you and your journey to becoming Vice President and Hematology Franchise Head at Takeda, and really what led you to this role and what drew you to this role.
Sure. So I'm going to take you back to the earlier phases of my career. I was in Australia. I was working across Asia Pacific. I wasn't in pharma, but I was in sort of other healthcare spaces. But it was through this work that I got the opportunity to really learn a lot about the different healthcare environments across Asia Pacific. Very diverse, very disparate, really. So I spent a long time there. It also prompted me or sparked an interest in me to do studies as I did my Master's of Public Health, to learn more about the healthcare ecosystems and how they impact society. Outside of Australia, I spent 6 years in Europe. I'm now in the US, as you know, and I've had a number of global roles. And through those, one thing that has fueled my career choices and interests is really diving into the differences of the healthcare systems, how they work, the complexity. I've seen many, none are perfect, that's for sure, but all very complex and unique. In terms of rare diseases specifically, as you mentioned, I got into the rare disease work about 12 years ago when I joined Takeda in Australia. I was working in primary immune deficiency, and then shortly after that moved to hemophilia. And honestly, it was a little bit by accident. It wasn't an intention back then. But as soon as I started working with those communities, I felt an instant connection. What's special to me, I think, about the rare disease community is how so much of the drive for these communities comes from the patients, the families, the caregivers themselves. It's really amazing to see how they can be at the epicenter of transformational change. Of course, what's also unique is that many ecosystems, partners across the ecosystem that are needed to drive forward patient care. For me, pivotal things are, the very first meeting I had with the primary immune deficiency head in Australia. And then in my space, in my work in hemophilia, I would say I've met so many stakeholders across the world, and they are thought leaders, they are change makers, and they inspire me all the time. They know who they are if they're listening. And I'd say it's easy to get up in the morning, to work hard. You want to, it's a bit easier to leave my own family to go and commit time to this work. And, you really feel like there's a whole group internally and externally working towards this goal of bringing innovation and transforming the lives of these underserved individuals in need. extremely rewarding and kind of makes work amazingly joyful.
That's so wonderful to hear, to really hear about how the different stakeholders and just the whole ecosystem of the rare disease space and how that has evolved over, the past couple of decades. And it's really great to hear how you've been contributing to that evolution. And so I'd like to know a bit more about, in terms of really the key responsibilities and challenges that you face as heading Takeda's hematology franchise. And I'd like to talk a bit more about that. So you serve the rare disease community and you have a particular focus on blood and bleeding disorders. So could you talk a bit more about the hematology franchise and what the specific challenges are in that specific space?
Absolutely. So Takeda has been serving the bleeding disorders community for over 70 years. And I think when you think as a member of the pharmaceutical community as like serving a patient community for that length of time, there's certainly a sense of pride. And we've been bringing innovation to that community for so many years as well. As recently as just a year ago, bringing new innovations to the bleeding and blood disorders community. As I reflect back, as I said, I think for me, a lot of the stakeholders in this community, we see the patient groups. We have a very dedicated, committed group of healthcare professionals and providers in this space. And I see how we've worked together over many, many years, and we work together today. And I'm a bit reflective that it's nice to know we have maybe a role to play in how that community, how that patient group has been able to transform their standard of care over many years. When I look back, I joined that area like 10, 12 years ago to what we have today. It's vastly, vastly different. And the innovation that has come to that space, the product choices, the therapy options, the care, it's really, really remarkable. And to think that maybe you play a very small role in that in some way is, as I say, brings a lot of joy. Of course, in the bleeding disorders community, we have a group of patients who have hemophilia, and we have other patients that live with a disease called von Willebrand's disease. And von Willebrand's disease is still, I would say, more underserved. And so that's also very, I say sometimes frustrating, and we talk about the frustration that we have of how we're still working today with this community of von Willebrand's people living with von Willebrand's disease that don't have the same level of choices, don't have the same level of care. Their diseases and symptoms are often minimized, and it's frustrating but rewarding because there's a role that we can do. There's a job to be done to work with the external stakeholders to try and improve that, to enhance that and elevate opportunities for that group of patients.
Mm-hmm. And so in terms of the evolution and the transformation of the rare diseases space and including the blood and bleeding disorders space, what really stands out to you in the last decade or so that's really kind of been one of the major driving factors of the changes that we've seen?
Yeah, I think certainly, product innovation is a big one, and it's certainly a core element of what we do. This is our bread and butter as a pharmaceutical company, and many others is about saying, okay, where can we develop medicines where unmet need exists? And in bleeding disorders, there's been a lot of innovation come to market. And as I mentioned, even over the last 5 and 10 years, we've brought innovations to market in the bleeding and blood disorder space. So I think that continual investment in future therapies is critical. But in rare diseases, that's not always the end of the story. I think in rare diseases, and where I've seen success, but where I also see a lot of gaps, is in some of the beyond the pill elements. Actually, there was a wonderful white paper that Takeda partnered with the National Organization of Rare Disorders, NORD, with in 2013. that highlights a couple of the key areas that are critical when we think about advancing care for rare diseases. Things like, does the disease area, do we have access to equitable access to genomic sequencing? Is there a centralized kind of comprehensive care model in place where patients can come to a expert center of excellence to really get the best standard of care that they deserve? Um, do we have a equitable participation from across the rare disease in research? And then lastly is around education. And uh, is there somebody, often it's pharmaceutical companies, and it's a wonderful role that we can play, I think, providing culturally relevant education to a diverse range of patients. And so, this was the sort of findings of that report. And I think it's a great, benchmark for when we think about how to move and advance care for patients in rare diseases. I think it's a great benchmark to have and a great tool for patient advocates to advocate for their own kind of area.
Indeed. And you mentioned that product innovation, and really that's the bread and butter essentially to get novel therapies and just a therapy to rare disease patients, because in many cases there may not be really any treatment for that particular disease. And so how does Takeda really leverage innovation? And we've seen bursts of various technologies, such as AI and machine learning, being implemented into the drug discovery models. And so, how is Takeda really leveraging innovation to address unmet needs in rare diseases?
Yeah, well, you mentioned it. I think across the spectrum is the answer. I think, the only thing that is limited, I think, with AI is our imagination. I was already actually this morning on with a call with a couple of our global data, digital, and technology leaders talking about even the next gen AI, genetics, I think it's called. And I think the world of technology is going to move faster than we can adopt it. But certainly at Takeda, um, we're focused, we're dedicated, we see the opportunity all the way, as you mentioned, from R&D, whether that's around leveraging technology to ensure equitable representation in the research and the trials that we're doing. We're definitely looking at AI and technology to shorten the time of those trials, so to improve speed to market. And then from a perspective of commercialization, all the way from things like telemedicine, genetic counseling has opportunities for leveraging technology, as well as, definitely how we engage, communicate, and educate our community, our physicians, and our patients. And I think, yeah, the opportunities are untapped. I think there's a lot of work we have to do as an industry to embed these opportunities now, but it's really exciting. And we're having conversations every day at Takeda about how do we really, change the mindset so we think about like a technology first enablement to all of the work that we do.
Yeah, indeed. I think when we think about the implementation of technologies like AI, we might think it may just be useful in one particular realm, let's say in drug discovery or something. But really, it spans the spectrum, as you said, from R&D through to trials and then access as well. So that's really wonderful to hear. And so, in terms of Takeda's, I think the other thing that stands out with Takeda and just with your work and everything that we've been discussing is really the patient centricity. And we keep hearing about these terms, but what does that really mean to you in terms of really the importance of it in the rare disease space? And how do you approach patient centricity?
Yeah, Takeda has a wonderful, simple model for this that I think we all kind of learn when we join the organization. And is really stuck with us because it's used every day in how we make decisions and engage. So the model that we use at Takeda, I know everyone, we talk about being patient-centric, and it is critical for all pharmaceutical companies to be patient-centric. That's how we need to make decisions. As I said, the model at Takeda, we call it PTRB, so patient, trust, reputation, business. And the idea is that when we're making decisions, we're first asking, is this the best thing for the patient? Before then, we're asking, does it build trust with society and enhance the reputation of the industry? And only if all of those sort of boxes are ticked will we be asking us, is this right for the sustainable business? I love this because it's really practical and we find ourselves using it, in meetings and day-to-day conversations around, okay, but does this, meet PTRB requirements? And I think in the rare disease space, as you said, like it's complex. This is a complex world of patients with often extremely high unmet need and underserved populations. And so combining like that really nice sort of structural element of how to make decisions dovetails very well into the serving of rare disease patients and ensuring that we're doing our best in every decision that we make by them.
And the patients and their caregivers are absolutely an important stakeholder in the whole process. But you also mentioned that I think collaborations and partnerships with other stakeholders at the table is really key in driving research and innovation, particularly in rare diseases, to address those unmet needs and to really empower patients throughout their healthcare journeys. And so, who are the important stakeholders at the table, and how do you bring them together to really help advance the goals at hand?
Yeah, I mean, the stakeholder list is probably endless, but we really look at the patients themselves, obviously, as the center. Even in these ultra rare or rare diseases, you do often, as I mentioned at the beginning, see these extremely passionate advocates. So, patients and their representatives are critical. The provider community, healthcare professionals, the doctors, the nurses, the comprehensive care, in many areas, it's beyond just doctors and nurses as well. It's really into a comprehensive care set of stakeholders. But of course, we've got to think about the system itself. So, I think this is really important that we're also talking and engaging with providers, hospital level, community providers, and also policymakers. We really need to make sure that in order to drive holistic, systematic infrastructural change, which is quite often what's needed, the policymakers are really critical to that to driving that change at that holistic level. We are really committed to this. We also, at a scientific level, like to partner in our research and bringing the best minds together. That's how I like to think of it. If you have all the stakeholders at the table, it's not just about getting the pull through, but it's really about bringing the minds together to say, okay, how do we shape this together? How do we think about one common goal, which I think is quite often the patient need, and think about shaping this together? One quick example, I think, of a wonderful partnership in recent years is a project that we called RareCap. It's with the Rare Disease Institute and Children's National Hospital. And what I love about this is it's an online platform, but it's a crowdsourced online platform of essentially rare disease protocols, treatment protocols, and alike. We know often when a patient with a rare, unique, ultra sort of special disease tries to get treatment from their non-expert provider, they can get lost in the system, even through diagnosis. It's very hard to have expert care in this space. So getting lost in the system, suboptimal care is common and rife. And so this platform enables access to the latest information, the latest treatment protocols that can be really accessed anywhere and by any provider. So our aim or our hope is that with that broad crowdsourced information sharing, we're elevating the care for many of these rare disease patient populations. I love this because I think that this intersection of community, of technology, and care will sort of be where we see opportunities of the future. And again, I think, the imagination could just go crazy with thinking about the opportunities when we bring those concepts together and bring a committed group of stakeholders together behind it.
Indeed. And in terms of Takeda's, I guess, pipeline, without going too much into specifics, I would say, what do you think are really the themes on the research and development side through to the clinical development side? What are some of the key trends or some of the key things that you're seeing and you're helping drive currently at the moment in terms of really bringing innovation to rare diseases?
Sure, and it's a wonderful question. We have a number of key focus areas, obviously, at Takeda. What's interesting is that in pretty much all of our key focus areas, whether that's gastrointestinal, hematology, oncology, neuroscience, we have products or assets in the pipeline in development that are addressing the needs of someone living with a rare disease or a rarer component of a more specialty disease. And why is that? It's because I think this is where the unmet need lives. We really want to bring transformational innovation to patients, and this is where we see a lot of unmet need. It means for me that that internally, the way in which we look at these smaller, unique, niched, underserved patient populations needs to penetrate across our entire organization, across our entire R&D organization, and across our entire commercialization organization as we bring these products to market in future years, of course. And I've mentioned some of these things already, like it's really much harder to access the right patients in this space. I think there's also opportunity that we'll see, hopefully, the need for potential regulatory change and things like this as these become more kind of common challenges in the future. So I think there's a lot of sort of potential of how the system will work with these, as I said, like, I keep saying rare, unique, small patient populations to really be able to serve them of the future. It's not just Takeda, I think, that has this kind of portfolio in their pipeline. And so I'm hopeful, maybe is the right word. Not always optimistic, but definitely hopeful that the system will keep evolving. And we'll do our bit. We'll try and bring diverse patients. We'll keep trying to find the unmet need in these patients and bring medicines to market for them. As I said, like, I'm also hopeful that the system will work with us and continue to evolve over the coming years.
Indeed. And I think really everything goes hand in hand. And for someone like yourself to help drive that's really, really fantastic. And what kinds of, I would ask, leadership principles really guide you in driving these innovations and managing large teams? And how do you keep everything streamlined and focused? As I can definitely hear from you that that's definitely the case with how things are being worked on at Takeda.
Yeah, it's a great topic because, we can only bring amazing innovation to patients if we have amazing teams, as you say, internally driving it. So I'm a big believer of a people focus leadership style. I will, not say I get it perfect every day, but, for me, it's really important that, and the team will know when they hear this, like, that we think about creating that safe space, that we create an environment where we do our best to create an environment where our teams can show up as their best, actually, as their best selves. I think it's really important that we thrive. I love my job. I love to love my job, and I feel privileged to do it. And I hope that many of my colleagues do as well. And so as a leader, I want to create an environment where they can bring their best selves, thrive at work, bring their diverse perspectives. We have a term that we've introduced in our team here over the last 12 months. We call about respectfully rumbling. We want to disagree. We want to debate. We want to have fun with that, because I believe that with that, we bring the best innovation for patients. I think that's how we keep raising the bar for ourselves, is by fostering as many the right brain, the many brains in the room, having that respectful rumble, coming up with the creative ideas. I think that's how we're going to serve patients best. I also personally think it's just the right thing to do as a leader, and sort of we have that responsibility as leaders. And I love to think that our teams, have a little smile on their way home from work because they feel like they did something rewarding and they, found joy perhaps while they were doing it. So it's a high bar, but hopefully we do it as best we can and to get there every day.
It certainly sounds like it. And I think what stood out to me from what you were saying is that we talk a lot about the diversity on the side of development and in terms of the patients, but it's also important to have those diverse opinions, experiences, backgrounds in your teams as well, which and to allow those voices to be heard and shared, and that's really what contributes and helps drive innovation. So really wonderful to hear that. And so in terms of any upcoming milestones or developments from your franchise at Takeda, what can we look forward to in the next couple of months and coming years?
So, I think we have an amazing team delivering great stuff every day. One of the things I was so proud of through 2024 was bringing a new product to market. So I'm going to look back before we look forward. We brought to market a product for chronic thrombotic thrombocytopenia purpura, ultra rare, hundreds of patients in the US, and that, a very, very small number. And we brought this to market, and watching over the past year, patients receive this treatment, hearing the stories from the healthcare professionals, from our team members, has been very rewarding. When there was not really much any therapeutic options prior, and you really bring something that is meeting a need in the market, and really watching this blossom over the last 12 months has been amazing. So for the year ahead, I have incredible continued hope for the mark that this medicine can make on patients' lives. And every month when we have our team meeting, we start it by sharing a patient story. And so often it's one of these stories for CTTP where we've heard about this transformational, really transformational kind of experience. And then there's more opportunities on the horizon. We hope to have indication expansions, and Takeda has, as I said, this amazing pipeline where just in the next few years, there's potential for multiple launches. So across the spectrum, there's just so much exciting work going on and hard work to be done to ensure that we can deliver those medicines to patients in the US and really across the world.
Anthea, thank you so much for your time today. And it was wonderful discussing all of the wonderful work that you're heading at Takeda in the franchise, and specifically in hematology and blood and bleeding disorders, but really in the rare disease landscape. And we're so happy that we have leaders like you in this space, and it was so wonderful to learn about everything that you're doing. And thank you so much for the work you do, and once again for your time today.
Thank you, Ayesha. So nice to meet you.
Likewise. That's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
To join the Xtalks community, visit Xtalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.